So, totally not clickbait. What's up? My name's John, and I definitely did just get fired from my dream job. I'm a freelance filmmaker, and right now I'm getting ready to unload my vehicle instead of working on a production that was gonna run for 3 days, and I would have gotten paid $5,000 for it. And this is that story, and this is, you know, how I'm dealing with it. A funny thing about this shoot, and this is necessary for me anyway, but my boom stand broke yesterday. I was using like a $35 boom pole. I actually made a video about if you want to do a budget video podcast, and I showed the rinky-dink thing I had in there. But it broke yesterday. So I drove around like a crazy person yesterday, and I went and got this behemoth of a boom pole for today's shoot. And it's heavy, and this is the second time I brought it in and out of this house today. I mean, it's so big. It's like 10 feet tall, and it goes out 6 feet. But hey, I've got an awesome boom pole now, so win. Always use sandbags. Or you just get a boom pole that has a weight on it. Oh, man. I know I'm stalling telling you what's going on and what happened. Let me set up some more stuff and some lights, and I'll say this. It has to do with a lack of preparation on my part, and that's my fault, and not going with my intuition. And it also has to do with not checking an address before I drive somewhere.
Oh boy. Unpacking the car after I packed it for work did not work. And then to set up all this gear doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great, but we're here to talk about it.
And I'm not gonna go too in depth with filmmaking tactics and tips right now. This is gonna be more about like the mindset of how to deal with getting fired from your job or losing a dream job, and about persevering and not giving up. Maybe a month ago, the marketing company that I work for, it's a husband and wife, they feed me, at this point, 70% of the clients that I get. They had reached out and said, we have someone that wants to work with you. So we talked back and forth. The project very quickly became, it was going to be me by myself filming for multiple days. So I was gonna get the entire $5,000 budget instead of like hiring makeup and a DP. And then I didn't have a contract, didn't have any money. We're doing some pre-production. I spent a day making a minute-long trailer for a documentary that we could make together. I used some like story block footage. I wrote out a minute-long script. I did a voiceover for it. And I went in and I presented it to her on a laptop. She said, that's amazing. I was like, that's awesome. I left that office that day, and we had talked about bartering and trading things, and I sent her a proposal for like $9,000, and I said, we can use the original $5,000, and then the rest of the money we can use for bartering. And then the lady was like, I think we're gonna have to pause on this. I don't know if that's what I wanna do right now. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing this client. And it's like, it's so nerve-wracking. It's so nerve-wracking being a freelancer and owning a business and constantly like wondering if you're gonna get revenue. So I sent her back another proposal, and I was like, this is the $5,000 proposal. This is how many days of work that I can do, and this is what it looks like. And the lady said, that's great, let's go. I've got a shoot that we need to do like 4 days from now. I said, okay, awesome, let's talk about it. She sent me an address for a place called Purdue Polytech High School. Purdue is a university in Indianapolis. Maybe you've heard of it. They're a Big Ten school. Division I in all their sports. Great school for engineering. But they're like an hour outside the city. They also happen to have 2 campuses in Indianapolis that go by Purdue Polytech High School. And it's like a technology-driven school that leads into the college. And I said 2. I did not know that there were 2 until today. Today is the day, like, I'm filming this right after I got fired, so if I seem like all over the place, that's why. Last night, we decided on a time, and I was like, I need to show up an hour early to get set up. I had looked on my GPS. I used the address from the email to see that it was 40 minutes away. was like, okay, I need to leave my house at 8:20. I have to have my son like set up and to go on the bus on his own and all this stuff. I got in the car, typed in Purdue Polytech High School, saw the one that was 40 minutes away, didn't look at the address. Got to the location, walked in and said I need to talk to Laura Smith. And they're like, well, she actually is in Broad Ripple, which is a place that's 20 minutes away from the place that's 40 minutes from my house. So I would have been 20 minutes late. And had I known that this person was going to be so upset, I could have called and said, hey, I've got a flat tire and I'm fixing it and I'll be there. But because I didn't think it was a big deal, I called the lady and said, hey, I'm at the wrong campus. I didn't know that there was two, and I'll be right there. And the lady was like, I'm not going to tell you everything she said, but she said, you're fired. And oh man, that felt like a kick right in the gut. But this is how I handled it. I'm 35 at this point. When I was 25, I probably would have handled it much differently. I would have burnt a lot of bridges. But I approached the situation with a huge amount of accountability. I said it was my fault. And I told the lady that I liked what she's doing with the city, and I understand why she doesn't want to work with me. I had suspicions that this person was going to be difficult to work with. And even last night, today I'm filming this on a Wednesday, and last night was Tuesday, and I was saying to my fiance, this situation is very hectic and chaotic. I wish I would have said we need more time. But they asked me to get going, and I said, all right. And in Stoicism, I know they talk about accountability. They also talk about accepting the things that you can control and letting go of the things you cannot. So what I've tried to do in my life, and as I've become healthier mentally and become more confident and like able as a man, as a provider, as a filmmaker, as a person, one of the biggest things I've been able to do and that I've done is adopting like the radical accountability aspect of my life. You know, I said this in the video that I put up yesterday, so I don't know when you'll see this. It was the last video on this channel where I talk about the quote from Mark Manson where he says, not everything that happens to you is your fault, but it's all your responsibility. So when I go into a situation, whether it's a competitive video game, whether it's something to do with my kids, whether it's a fight with my fiance, I've burnt dinner, I now successfully, 90% of the time, the first thing I say to myself is, what can I do to make it better? So last night, I was thinking, what could I do to make this better? And the answer in the moment was absolutely nothing because I'd already agreed to go and film and shoot. But what I was saying to do in the future was to have a pre-production PDF. Have a list of, this is what it looks like when you hire me for work. This is how we go about it, which I'm going to make one of those, and I will put a link to it for what it looks like with my film business. I will put it in the description of this video. If you read it and you have any questions, you can hit me up on Instagram or you can comment, but it will be what a filmmaking, freelancing shoot looks like for me, a solo filmmaker. I work with other people sometimes, but I do almost all of my production shoots are me getting hired as a videographer / filmmaker, and I go and set up lights and cameras and I do it on my own. Anyway, I said that I should do that. I said that I should have a pre-production, I should have an outline and all this stuff. And from now on, it's also going to have an address at the very top. So I had a feeling it was going to be hectic and chaotic. So honestly, it was no surprise to me that I ended up going to the wrong location. And then the person got mad enough that they decided they weren't going to work with me for the entire project and fired me. And now I'm out $5,000. And it feels so bad to think about that. But what is true, and this is true for you too, if something bad has happened to you, if you cannot do anything about what has happened to you, the quicker you can let that go, the better. I've talked to several people that have gone to therapy. I've talked to several therapists, and it's very conflicting on perspective, like different opinions you get. Some people say you shouldn't use perspective to make yourself feel better, and you shouldn't use it to other people to make them feel better. Honestly, perspective works for me a lot. I called my mom and talked to her about getting fired, but we didn't talk about that at first. I called my mom at like 9:30. She called me right back, and I could tell she was in pain. She's older than me, obviously, because she's my mom. But she's in a lot of physical pain right now. She's getting ready to have surgery, and I could hear the pain emanating through the phone and into my ears. And I kind of jokingly, my mom and I have a dark sense of humor, I kind of jokingly said to her, after hearing you, I feel pretty good right now. Because if that lady called me back and said, you have to be in the same amount of pain as your mom, and I'll give you the $5,000, it would be like, get effed. F you and your F and A. That's what I would have said. And my mom's like, I know. She's like, my mom said, I'm paying $40,000 to not feel this pain anymore. And it made me think of a quote from the Buddha. We'll say it's from the Buddha or anonymous. But it's the desire is the thing that drives us crazy. Desire is what makes us miserable. A healthy person is full of desires, and a sick person only has one desire. So, I got fired, and I'm not gonna get the money that I thought I was going to get, but I'm healthy. So why am I gonna spend my time being miserable when I can spend my time adjusting and pivoting and doing something else about it? Oh man, I hear this a lot with people that have client-facing jobs. I hear this a lot with freelancers and video people, and I've said it a lot too, that most of my job is managing expectations. I had the distinct feeling that the project I was doing with this person was rushed, and I at no point said, we need to stop. I was too afraid of saying to the person, this is a bad idea, or we need more time to do this appropriately. And even a few weeks ago, honestly up until like hours ago, I didn't have the tools to be able to articulate that with somebody or the confidence to be able to say that to them. And if you're going to do things on your own, friends, if you're going to make YouTube videos like I have for a couple of years and you haven't figured out a recipe that works yet, if you go out and freelance like I'm doing, you're going to mess up and you're going to make mistakes. If you work for someone else, you're going to make mistakes. And luckily, if you have a good boss, they're not going to fire you. Or if you work at, like I work in restaurants, and like if I make a client mad at the restaurant, they don't ever come back, and then I quit the next day, that company is out the cost of that person and their friends that they tell not to go, not coming in. And as a single employee, I'm just out the cost of whatever I lose until I got another job. I'm a business owner now, so I feel every penny of that $5,000. I think about Christmas coming up and think about how I wanted to buy my kids whatever with that money, and I just don't get to do that now. Don't feel bad for me. If you watched my last video, or if you know who I am, like my fiance is a breadwinner, I'm making money, like we're good. For God's sake, we're gonna go like to the Virgin Islands for spring break. But that's only because we both made a lot of mistakes and we keep learning from them. When you manage expectations with clients or any job, situations pop up that you've not experienced before, and you won't know until you're in that situation. Which, if you're watching this and you're thinking about starting something and you keep hearing the advice that you should just start, a lot of that advice comes from people like me that have like taken the leap and they're doing something, and you mess up. You have days like this, but you learn and you adapt and you keep moving because that's just what you do. But a lot of the situations that I experienced, like even today, the thing that got me fired, I wouldn't have known that was a thing unless I was doing it. So I will jokingly say in my contracts that I write up for people, like every line item I have, like the thing that says you get a non-refundable deposit or blah, 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 I'll be like, I remember what client burnt me on something or where I messed up on something, and that's what that line came from. So yeah, you manage expectations, but in order to understand how to manage expectations, you have to start learning what is expected of you. So that brings me to the end of the video. And like I said earlier, there will be a PDF And what that's going to be is me breaking down, just very simply, like, we have a consultation, my client and I, and this is day 1. Day 2 is production, pre-production, where I come up with a story and a storyboard. Day 3 is scouting, day 4 is filming, and then day 5 is editing and whatever. If you're a freelance filmmaker, or if you're just a freelancer and you're wanting to have something to send to a client, maybe that will help. Maybe you know someone who's a freelance filmmaker or photographer, and you can share this video with them and tell them, hey, there's a thing in there that you can use. But for now, I've got to go and try to figure out what I'm going to do for work next week and talk to the other clients I have. Oh, also, before you leave, if you know me and you've been a fan of what I've been doing, the Neil Gore documentary, you guys, I'm going to go to a theater tomorrow for the community that Neil is from, and they want to see it, to potentially show it in front of a live audience. So that's awesome. God, I couldn't have done it without you all. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a marathon. I made a documentary about me running a marathon to raise money for one of the greatest men I've ever met in my entire life. And that video is right here. Guys, stay awesome. Let's get better together. And God, only focus on the things that you have control of. Because otherwise it's going to drive you freaking crazy. Bye.